Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. 2017, it started as a year that held so much promise for Dillian Whyte. It was supposedly the year he was going to make some real noise in the heavyweight division and maybe make a play for one of the belts. He'd just come off a hard-fought win in December 2016 over Derek Chisora in what many saw as a Fight of the Year candidate. It was a great fight, it really was. His profile, in short, it was booming. There was a lot of talk that there could be an immediate rematch with Chisora, or he'd be fighting on the AJ Vlad undercard in April. Nothing happened. Neither happened. It emerged both Whyte and Chisora just wanted far too much money, and Eddie Hearn, Whyte's promoter, didn't think it was a pay-per-view headliner. He's probably right as well, to be fair. Then Whyte started sending out some signals he'd be back in June, and it was later confirmed he'd fight Mariusz Wach, which many of us thought was a very solid opponent to see where Whyte was at, because Wach, he's got a great chin, he's no joke. But as the fight date approached, it was quietly cancelled, with Whyte and Hearn citing a foot injury. Some rumours circulating at the time suggested ticket sales maybe weren't as hot as they could have been. But, that's by the by now, it was cancelled. It was about that same time that the campaign for Whyte to fight WBC champion Deontay Wilder started to ramp up and go into overdrive, with Whyte heckling the Bronze Bomber over several weeks on social media and calling him a fake champion. Eddie Hearn revealed publicly that Wilder had refused 3 major offers, one of them $4.5 million, with US TV money on top. But Eddie Hearn had a plan B, and he started talking about landing a major fight for Whyte in a US debut. The aim there was to make some noise and build his profile. But as the weeks dragged on and it got closer to August, it started to become obvious and apparent. Eddie Hearn and co, they were struggling to land an opponent. And especially it became very apparent when there was no opponent with only a couple of weeks to go until fight night. And he, of course, was fighting on the Terence Crawford undercard. Then Eddie Hearn announced with about 2 weeks out from the fight that the opponent that he had lined up was former turn-of-the-century top heavyweight Michael Grant, who was now a 44-year-old faded and jaded journeyman. And you can remember, I'm sure the backlash was swift. And the genie was put back in the bottle immediately, and Grant was replaced quickly with Malcolm Tan. And for many of us, I'm sure that was a very minor upgrade, just a slightly better journeyman. So what was meant to be a big splash for Whyte ended up being barely a ripple. And Whyte ended up on the untelevised part of the Terence Crawford Julius Ndongo undercard. He looked good in the main for the couple of rounds that it lasted, but it was what it was. A decent heavyweight, blowing off some ring rust against an overmatched journeyman. And since then, there's been talk in the last couple of months about a number of potential fights for Dillian Whyte against the likes of Jarrell Miller, Lucas Brown, Robert Helenius and Joseph Parker. Dominic Breazeale's name, as well as Bryant Jennings, were also included in an August poll Eddie Hearn did on who should Whyte fight, and that was up on Twitter. But nothing has come to pass. So now we're 3 weeks or so out from the Anthony Joshua Kubrat Pulev fight, which Eddie Hearn has spoken about Whyte being potentially the chief support for on the undercard. So I'm just not sure how that actually works and, actually happens now. Because there is no opponent, and Whyte, you can't go in there and shadow box or anything. To be fair though, we did think Lucas Brown was going to be the opponent for October 28th. But then he decided the money he was being offered, not enough, and he didn't think he had enough time to prepare. Which is curious given it was probably the offer of his career, given he was coming off 2 PED-related cases from 2016. So that was an opportunity missed for Lucas Brown, in my opinion. And you might recall, so Robert Helenius' name had been floating around on a number of occasions. It kept popping up. And I automatically assumed, well, he's going to be the backup and they'll confirm him at some point if all other options fall over, because most people, they don't want to see that fight. Robert Helenius is certainly well past his prime now, and those other names that we've already listed, well, they're more viable fights in terms of fan appeal, that sort of thing. But maybe that too, that fight with Helenius, maybe that's also fallen over or stalled. Or Helenius's people, maybe they're using the fact that Whyte can't buy a fight right now to drive up the Helenius purse offer. It'd be smart to do that too. But regardless, Whyte is without a fight. And even if Dillian Whyte does not end up on the Joshua undercard, which is looking increasingly unlikely the closer we get, then what next? We know Eddie Hearn has been trying to tee up a Joseph Parker fight in particular. He wants Whyte to fight for the WBO title. Whyte's got a decent ranking in the WBO. He's in the mix. Joseph Parker has an upcoming voluntary defense. But the problem now is Joseph Parker's promoter, Duco Events, it says the offer from Hearn isn't nearly good enough. And it didn't come close to the offers Wilder was fielding earlier this year. I mean, Hearn, to be fair, has been running a line in the media that Parker hasn't looked good, etc. Obviously trying to talk him down and make it look like he's doing him a favour by getting a Whyte fight. But the bottom line is here, for Hearn, it might be all well and good doing that. But at the end of the day, if he wants Whyte to be the fighter that Parker faces in the voluntary defence, he's going to have to cut a bigger cheque and pay over the odds. It really is as simple as that. So Duco Events owner David Higgins, he is also now taken to playing potential suitors off against each other through the media, saying we've received offers from Fighter X, Fighter Y, Fighter J, Fighter K, while keeping relatively quiet about the UK situation and Hearn. Because remember, Parker and his team have been saying ad nauseum over a period of time that the UK is going to be their new base. So for me, a lot of this from Duco and Higgins in particular is posturing, and it's designed to drive offers up. And I think while the Asian options of a Fujimoto fight in Japan and a Zhili Zhang fight in China, they're appealing. I mean, if they're really going to make the UK the home, build Parker's profile, they've got to fight Whyte. But if the money's not there, it doesn't make sense, does it? And that's up to Eddie Hearn. So he needs to put his hand in his pocket, dig deeper and find some more cash. But then something's happened in this past week that seemingly may throw a lifeline of a fight. An opening to potentially face Deontay Wilder. As we know, Luis Ortiz, Wilder's opponent for the November 4th fight in Brooklyn at the Barclays, he has failed a drugs test. So all that's playing out right now. We don't know what's going to happen. But should he be banned for using performance-enhancing drugs, well then, Whyte is the next cab off the rank after Ortiz in the WBC rankings. And he's available to fight. And Whyte has certainly been active in letting everyone know that. He's been active on social media calling for such a fight to take place if the opportunity arises. But Deontay Wilder has taken to social media in a video to pour a bit of cold water on a Whyte fight. I couldn't actually find the original video to drag down from the internet, so I've transcribed a couple of lines from what I could find. So Wilder says of Whyte, he's a PED user. They know I'll beat him up. I'm just going to straight beat him up. I ain't going to get no credit for beating Dillian Whyte. Let's just be real. They want to compare me to AJ. They want to see how bad and how fast. It has nothing to do with me and AJ. Then Wilder actually went on quite a rant about the triangle sort of theory in boxing and, some other crap that I lost interest in. But anyway, so we see from what he's saying that if the Ortiz fight gets canned by the WBC, the Whyte fight's probably not going to happen. One, because Whyte is a PED user. He won't get enough credit for beating Whyte, and apparently he wants to stay away from any Joshua comparisons. What is interesting is the whole no credit situation. I mean, if you've listened to this channel for any length of time, you'll know that I think Wilder and his team, they've created this image problem for Wilder themselves by fighting somewhat modest opposition over a period of more than 2 years. 5 voluntary defenses against 5, not top level guys. They were okay, but they were nothing career defying. So now it has to be big fights or bust. And that's why he has to face a big name like Ortiz, because we the fans won't put up with anything less. But if Ortiz is banned or sanctioned or whatever, then ideally Wilder should face the next best available fighter, which on the WBC rankings is Whyte. But I noted with interest in the video, and you can find it online as well, Fight Hype's got it, the person who was filming Wilder threw in that Wilder has a mandatory to take care of. And when I heard that, my heart just sunk a little bit, and I was just like, now if Bermane Stiverne is the backup plan, then they can just get out of here with that crap right now, because the reason Wilder avoided Stiverne most of this year is because he didn't want to fight him. And that's because no one wanted to see that fight, and the TV networks weren't interested in picking up that fight. No one cared for that fight except Stiverne. We saw Wilder dominate Stiverne to win the belt almost 3 years ago now. There is no replay necessary. So how is there going to be any interest now if the Ortiz fight is cancelled and it ends up being Stiverne? We're back in the same situation. It's just, it's a bit of a joke. So if the answer is Stiverne, then somebody was asking the wrong question. But it's clear the door is closing on Dillian Whyte for a Wilder fight. Probably no amount of money now will get it done, even if the opportunity arises. And 2017, sadly, is closing the door on Dillian Whyte. He's all dressed up, but nowhere to go. That's it from me. Drop a comment, hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.